at Vitebsk State Medical University, and we are eating amazing borscht, the best borscht in the world.
The best borscht in the world is in the Medical University canteen.
Yes, because it's very healthy, tasty, and cheap.
How cheap? How cheap is it here?
It is less than 1 ruble.
So the 63 kopecks.
Yes, exactly.
Which is about 25 euro cents
About it, yes.
for all of this. Привет and welcome to the city of Vitebsk. And you're probably wondering, where the hell is Vitebsk, Connor? It is in the north of Belarus, very close to the Russian border, and actually both sides in the northwest. City of 350,000 people, so quite a small town. Not the big metropolis like Minsk, which is close to 2 million, which is the capital of Belarus. And I'm here for a weekend to check out the city. I like to, every once in a while, get out of the big cities like you see in this channel, like St. Petersburg, Minsk, Kiev, Odessa, and come to the provinces. So the city has a very interesting history associated with Jewish painters and the head of Israeli intelligence Mossad. So let's go and check out Vitebsk. Поехали! So I know that probably you're not a native Russian speaker watching this channel, and probably your level of Russian is not very high. And that means that when you come to the provinces, to a city like Vitebsk, then yes, it's going to be definitely more of a struggle to get around and to navigate things, and definitely to make connections with local people, unless you speak a basic level of Russian. Now, there are two official languages in Belarus. The second one is Belarusian, along with Russian. And actually, this is the city where I've seen Belarusian written and used the most in all of my trips around Belarus. I'm not really sure why that is. I went to the local Irish pub, ironically it was an Irish pub, and actually they spoke to me in Belarusian, and the menu was actually written in Belarusian and in English. So there are English menus for sure, and of course, occasionally you're going to find normally younger people who speak some English, but overall there isn't much English spoken in the provinces of Belarus. This is also the region, Eastern Europe in general, where the English language skills are the lowest in Europe by far. So we're talking about Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, and definitely people over 25 in general. Outside of a big urban center, like I was saying, it's going to be very unusual that they have a decent command of English. So if you are a big language freak like I am, then this is a pretty interesting city for that reason. You're going to get a big return on your investment having learned Russian in terms of time, and if you have learned a little bit of Belarusian like I did, coincidentally it is very similar to Ukrainian Belarusian, so if you speak Polish or Ukrainian, you're probably going to understand a lot of it. So that's another reason why I like my experience here. No. What do you say in Belarusian? Is it смачного? Смачный?
Прос на миллион. Как будет по-белорусски приятного аппетита? Ну как будет? Смачно есть или приемного аппетита? Смачно есть, да?
Смачно есть.
Смачно есть.
Как я сказала.
Спасибо. Хорошо. But it's not common. They don't say it here.
Yes. So what exactly does this mean? It just means like, I still don't understand what the word kvitve.
Расцветай, цвети. It means like be flowerful and shine.
So the city of Vitebsk.
Flower, because the symbol of Vitebsk also is Vasilok. It's purple, like blue and purple flower.
So back in the day of the Russian Empire, Vitebsk was actually known as the Russian Toledo, as in Spain, because it was such a beautiful city with a mix of different ethnicities like Latvians, Belarusians, Russians, and Jews. And in fact, the city is also known for being a mecca for painters, and in fact a lot of Jewish painters, because at the time the city was, well, before the Second World War, the city was basically about half Jewish here, and the most famous of those is Marc Chagall. So Marc Chagall was a very famous Jewish Belarusian French artist. He later moved to Western Europe, obviously to escape what happened here, first the pogroms against the Jews in the region here in the Pale of Settlement in the Russian Empire, and later on during the Soviet Union when it was invaded by Nazi Germany. This region was completely depopulated. Both Jews and non-Jews were murdered en masse, and actually Belarus as a whole lost 30% of its population, and most of the Jewish population of this town, Vitebsk, actually left. Either they were murdered during the Holocaust or they left just afterwards. So today there isn't much, well, there's not like one synagogue left in the city, and there aren't too many Jews left in Belarus in general, and even here in Vitebsk, but at the time it was about 50% Jewish, this city, and it's home to this kind of Jewish artistic renaissance in Eastern Europe. Yanuba Pen was a drawing teacher, an artistic teacher here in the city, and he taught many famous Jewish Belarusian artists. Marc Chagall was the most famous, and the city kind of marketed itself today on being the birthplace of Marc Chagall. You can go and see his house on one side of the river, and then over here on the other side of the river, just beside me, or just behind me, you have the Artistic Center, which has not just art from Marc Chagall, but also other Jewish artists from here, from this region around Vitebsk. So a very interesting person born here in Vitebsk was Isser Harel. Now you probably don't recognize that name, but you will definitely recognize the name of the intelligence agency that he headed up just after its foundation in the 1950s in Israel, and that of course is the Mossad. Now he actually also founded Shin Bet, which is the internal intelligence service in Israel, and he was born right here in Vitebsk. Now his main claim to fame, not only just having founded or led the Mossad, is actually the extraction of Adolf Eichmann, the infamous Nazi who partook in the final solution, basically the Holocaust extermination of Jews, particularly in this region. So that is the Second World War memorial here in Vitebsk, and that is something you see very common, an eternal flame here in the region, the former Soviet Union, especially in Belarus and Ukraine. This region was decimated by the Second World War. Not only was its Jewish population effectively exterminated, but millions of people here who were non-Jews also were murdered by the Nazi regime, and in particular the Einsatztruppe, who came here just behind the Nazi soldiers during Operation Barbarossa. And there's a great film that you can also watch, pretty hard film to watch, called Come and See, Idi Smatri, that really gives you a sense of what it was like to be trapped here, behind enemy lines to a certain extent if you were Belarusian during the Second World War. So the second anecdote I want to tell you about Isser Harel was actually at the time that Stalin died. So after Stalin died, there was a kind of rethink within the Communist Party in the Soviet Union at the time, because obviously, as you're very well aware, Stalin committed many atrocities in the country, and he's basically a sociopath. So they tried to undo a lot of what Stalin had put in place in the Soviet Union, and Khrushchev, the new leader of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, he gave a speech, a secret speech, and no one had any idea outside of basically the Politburo in Moscow exactly what had been said in the speech. But Isser Harel, as head of Mossad, he got his hands on a copy of the speech, and he actually shared it with Western intelligence, with the CIA, and that's how we were able to know that things had gotten a lot better in the Soviet regime, and we needed to, I say we, I mean us in the West, in Western Europe and in the United States, and that we could start to engage with the Soviet Union, that Stalin had been replaced by definitely a lot more open and less brutal regime, even if obviously the Soviet Union remained to a certain extent quite a tricky partner or rival to deal with.
Watch Connor's vlog.
Why not? Get the thumbs down.
So if you have been to a provincial city here in Belarus, be sure to drop me a comment below in the comment section down there below the video, and let me know how you got on, what your experience was like, because one thing that I've noticed during this trip to Vitebsk is that it's quite different to when I go to cities that I know pretty well, like Minsk, Odessa, Kiev, St. Petersburg, or even Moscow that I've been to a couple of times, because coming in here, not knowing anyone, not having been here before, and relying on the information that obviously I read online, it was a little bit tougher than I expected. Also, I haven't been doing too many solo missions in general, because either I'm traveling with my clients or I'm hanging out with my friends. And coming here, it actually reminded me that it's definitely suboptimal to travel on your own, no matter how character building it was back in the day when I did it a little bit, when I backpacked as a student. Definitely coming to a city and not knowing anyone, doing it on your own, it is a lot tougher, both psychologically and definitely in terms of the experience that you have, because it took me the bones of 5 or 6 days to really figure out where everything was in the city, the best places that were really a good fit for me and what I was looking to do here, especially in the evening. And that's even though obviously with the internet you can read about places and look on different rating websites and review websites, it actually didn't really pair up to reality. And one of the first things was because things had changed, especially information in English. It was very sparse for these for a city like Vitebsk. And then when I tried to go to places, a lot of them are actually even closed down or closed for the winter. So it actually took me to a few days of going around experimenting and figuring out where everything was, and then actually meeting local girls who were actually able to show me the really cool in spots and whatnot that were actually what I was really looking for. And that was something I couldn't find online reading, or obviously being here on my own. It actually took a little bit more of a psychological effort to go out and meet people. That's just the way it is. You don't have someone who's a good fit to travel with you. That's who I recommend always traveling with, not just have a travel buddy for the sake of a travel buddy. That's probably the least optimal solution. Actually, I had a prospective client on the phone, and he told me that exactly, that he didn't want to have to travel with certain people because they were work colleagues and they were around the same age. It just wasn't a good fit. He'd rather come here to Eastern Europe with me. So that is a nice segue into what are you doing next weekend, because it could be you with me here in Belarus. I'm not advocating that we come to Vitebsk on the first trip. We can go to another bigger city, a more lively city in Eastern Europe for that, somewhere like Minsk or Kiev or Odessa or St. Petersburg or Moscow. Any of those cities are good. Also Lviv in Ukraine. The first step that you need to take is, of course, to go down below the video and click on the link for the application form and apply. But I'm only interested in working with guys that are really pushing themselves to develop, not looking for a quick fix solution like an introduction website to women. There are matchmaking brokers, dating sites. I did some videos of the ones that I can say are the most trustworthy that I've encountered, because in general it's not a very reputable industry, all of that. And if that's what attracts you, then the Zara experience is not going to be for you, because that's not what I arranged. But what you are going to be able to do is come here and obviously not have to do the solo mission or figure out where everything is, and you're going to have my over 10 years of experience of traveling and dating in Eastern Europe. So it's going to give you all the shortcuts so you don't waste loads and loads of time. You also don't go out on dates and stuff that are set up by matchmakers that in the end are not going to be a good fit for you. We're going to go out and we're actually going to socialize like real people in real life. That's why I want guys that are actually socially competent. If you're a very young guy and just like looking to have some sort of sex tourism experience in Eastern Europe, like paying for sex, stuff like that, obviously this is not the channel for you, because that's not what I cater for. Also, the Zara experience will not be for you. Even if you're just interested in like hooking up with lots of chicks and don't really want to go for quality, also not going to be for you. Going to put you in that category. But if you've managed to listen through my rant at the end of the video, then I'm guessing you are possibly a good fit for the Zara experience. So definitely fill out the application form, and if I think, having vetted them, that it's good for us to talk, we're going to jump on a 10 to 15 minute strategy call and go through it. And it might be you with me here in Eastern Europe next weekend. I actually looked at the stats, and I think of people actually clicking the link and actually in the end we jump on a strategy call, I think it's like 1 or 2%. So I do try to be really, really selective once you've gone through that process of filling out the application form. So if we jump on a call, it's definitely a good sign that there's a good possibility that we will work out, as long as we agree to everything on the call, of course. Yeah, it's almost springtime, even though we're actually in the middle of February. Pretty remarkable. If you don't like the cold, it was good. So I'm going to go and enjoy my final evening here, have a nice shisha or hookah, something I love to do myself when I'm relaxing in Eastern Europe. And I will see you in the very next video. Do svidania. Ciao, ciao.
Zara Experience.